We're going to talk about solving absolute value equations. These are really pretty simple if you understand the idea of an absolute value. So, for example, an absolute value symbol is two straight lines, two vertical lines, and there can be just a variable, a number, or an expression in between those vertical lines. And what it means is that whatever value is produced between the absolute value symbols, the lines, it will result in a positive number. So if the answer is negative, it will come out as a positive. The idea of absolute value is it's the distance a number is from zero. And so you can see that if we ask, what value of x has a distance of 3 from 0, you can see there's actually two answers, positive 3, but also negative 3. So we ignore the negative sign because we're looking at a magnitude, okay? And so if you take a look down here at an absolute value equation, or it's an equation, and in the absolute value, here we have an expression x minus 3. And the question is, what values of x would produce a 5? Now, we've already got the solutions here, and I'll back up and explain it. But for example, if x is an 8 and we replace x with 8, well, 8 minus 3 is 5. The absolute value of 5 is equal to 5. So that is, in fact, a solution. But notice there's also a second solution that would produce it. It's the value of x that would produce a negative 5, such that when we take the absolute value, it still produces a positive 5. So negative 2 for x, if we put it in, negative 2 minus 3 is a negative 5. The absolute value of a negative 5 is also a 5. Okay, so there's going to be two answers that produce exactly the same results. And so the way we solve this is just very, very simple. The first thing you want to do, step one, is to isolate the absolute value expression on one side of the equation. Okay, that means that the only thing on the one side will be whatever the absolute value is. Anything outside of the absolute value must be removed in the same way that you remove it when you solve an equation. Okay, once you have the absolute value isolated, then you're going to set up two equations. One where the expression inside the absolute value is the positive value, and one where it equals the negative value. And then you solve each equation separately and then check answers to make sure it makes sense. So you can see in this example that we already kind of went through, how did I get the 8 and the negative 2? Well, I took what was inside the absolute value, the x minus 3, and I set it equal to both the positive 5 and the negative 5 and solved each. Well, these are real simple equations to solve, so you can see where the 8 and the negative 2 came from. Okay, so very, very simple. So let me scroll down here a little bit, and we'll go ahead and solve a couple of these from the notes. We've done this in class. Okay, so here, notice that there's more than just an absolute value on the one side. So the first step is we do want to isolate the absolute value. So what do? We'll divide both sides by the 2. That will cancel out this 2 to a factor of 1, and 1 times anything is itself. So this results in the absolute value of 2x plus 4, that's a 4, is equal to a 6. And now that I have the absolute value isolated, I can then set up two equations. 2x plus 4 is equal to 6, and 2x plus 4 is equal to a negative 6. Okay, so I'll solve the left one first. I'll subtract 4 from both sides. That would give me a 2, and then I'll divide both sides by 2. That results in a 1. Okay, the other equation, I'll subtract the 4 again, but that would result in a negative 10. Divide by 2 results in a negative 5. Now, does the answer make sense? Well, let's substitute a 1 in. So if I go back to my original equation, in the absolute value, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 plus 4 is 6, and then I multiply that result times 2, I do get a 12. Okay, what about negative 5? Inside the absolute value, 2 times a negative 5 is a negative 10. Negative 10 plus 4 is a negative 6, but then I apply the absolute value to that, which produces a positive 6. 6 times 2 is 12. So you can see the answers do check. Okay, so I'm not going to necessarily solve all of these for you. You can see that what are we going to do here? We're going to subtract 9 from both sides first to isolate the absolute value. This results in the absolute value of y minus 4 is equal to a positive 6. And then from there, we go ahead and set up two equations. Y minus 4 is equal to 6. Y minus 4 is equal to negative 6 and solve. Here's about as complicated as we'll probably make it. We got a few things to do first. We got to go ahead and get rid of the negative 9 first. We want to isolate this absolute value. Think of it as just a variable that you would isolate. And so the order would be we get rid of what's added or subtracted first. So we would add 9 to both sides. That results in 9, absolute value of 8x plus 4 is equal to 27. And then we want to get rid of the 9 outside the absolute value by dividing both sides by 9. That results in the absolute value of 8x plus 4 is equal to 3. And then set up your two equations and solve. Okay, pretty simple.